I was married to the same woman for 52 years. I slept beside her every night. I ate breakfast across from her every morning. I knew how she took her coffee, which side of the bed she preferred, what television shows she liked to watch. But I did not know she was lonely. I did not know she had been lonely for years, maybe decades. I am 86 years old. My wife, Margaret, passed away 3 years ago, and since she's been gone, I have had nothing but time to look back at our marriage and see what I missed. I missed almost everything. I loved her. I want to be clear about that. I loved her from the day I met her until the day she died. But love, I have learned, is not enough. Not if you don't pay attention. Not if you stop showing up. I stopped showing up a long time ago. I just didn't realize it until she was gone. I met Margaret in 1968. I was 23. She was 21. We were introduced at a friend's wedding reception. She was wearing a pale yellow dress. She laughed at something I said, and I remember thinking I wanted to hear that laugh again. We started dating. It was easy, comfortable. She had a warmth about her that made me feel calm. I had never been good with words, and she didn't seem to mind. We got married the following year. Small wedding, both families. A honeymoon in a cabin by a lake that her uncle owned. I remember sitting on the porch of that cabin, watching the sun set over the water, and thinking that I had everything I needed. A good job, a good wife, a future that looked steady and safe. I thought that was what marriage was: safety, stability, someone to build a life with. I didn't understand that marriage was also something you had to keep building, every day, every year. I thought once you had it, you had it. I was wrong. The early years were good. We were young. We were learning each other. We talked about our days, our dreams, our fears. Margaret wanted children. I did too. We tried for several years, but it didn't happen. We saw doctors. We did tests. Eventually we accepted that it wasn't going to be. It was hard on her. Harder than it was on me, I think. She cried about it sometimes. I held her. I told her it would be okay. I meant it. But after a while, I stopped bringing it up. I thought I was being kind. I thought talking about it only made it worse. Now I wonder if I was just avoiding her pain, if I was uncomfortable with her grief and wanted it to go away. That was the first time I chose silence over connection. It wouldn't be the last. We settled into a routine: work, dinner, television, weekends, errands. We had a rhythm, and I mistook that rhythm for intimacy. Margaret kept the house running. She remembered birthdays. She planned gatherings. She maintained the friendships I was too busy to tend to. I worked. I provided. I mowed the lawn and fixed what needed fixing. I thought I was doing my part. I thought we were a team. But teams talk, teams check in, teams notice when something is wrong. I didn't notice. There were signs, small ones at first. Margaret would ask if I wanted to go for a walk after dinner. I would say I was tired. She would suggest a weekend trip somewhere. I would say maybe next month. She would start to tell me about something a friend had said or something she had read. I would nod, but I wasn't listening. Not really. After a while, she stopped asking about the walks. She stopped suggesting trips. She stopped telling me stories, and I didn't notice. I thought we were fine. I thought silence meant peace. I thought the absence of conflict meant the presence of happiness. It didn't. By the time we were in our 40s, the distance had become normal. We still ate together. We still slept in the same bed. We still said, "I love you," before turning out the lights. But we didn't talk about anything real. We talked about schedules, groceries, who was picking up what. Margaret had friends she met for lunch. She had hobbies. She kept busy. I told myself she was happy. She never complained. She never yelled. She never said anything was wrong. But she also stopped laughing the way she used to. She stopped reaching for my hand. She stopped looking at me like she was waiting for something. I didn't notice. There's a moment I go back to often. We were in our mid-50s. It was a Saturday afternoon. Margaret was sitting in the living room, reading a book. I walked through on my way to the garage. She looked up at me. She said, "Do you ever feel like we're just going through the motions?" I stopped. I looked at her. I didn't understand the question. I said, "What do you mean?" She hesitated. She opened her mouth like she was about to say something important. Then she closed it. She said, "Never mind. It's nothing." I nodded. I went to the garage. I didn't think about it again for years. Now I think about it every day. That was her reaching for me. That was her trying to tell me something. And I walked away. I don't know what she would have said if I had sat down, if I had asked her what she meant, if I had listened instead of leaving. I will never know. The years passed. We got older. We retired. We had more time together, but we didn't use it any differently. We watched television in the same room, but rarely talked about what we watched. We ate meals together in comfortable silence. We slept side by side like two people who had run out of things to say. I thought that was normal for older couples. I thought we had said everything there was to say. I was wrong. Margaret got sick when she was 80. It started with fatigue, then weight loss, then a diagnosis that felt like a door closing. Cancer, advanced. The doctors said there were options, but their voices said something else. I sat beside her in those appointments. I held her hand. I tried to be strong, but even then, I didn't ask her how she was feeling. Not really. I asked about her symptoms, her medications, her appetite. I didn't ask what she was afraid of. I didn't ask what she needed from me. I didn't know how. The last months were quiet. We had a hospital bed set up in the living room. I sat beside her every day. She slept a lot. When she was awake, we watched birds through the window. She had always loved birds. One afternoon she looked at me. Her eyes were tired but clear. She said, "I wish we had talked more." I didn't know what to say. I held her hand tighter. She said, "I had so much I wanted to tell you." I asked her what she meant, but she just closed her eyes and shook her head. She died 4 days later. The funeral was on a Tuesday. Grey sky, cold wind. People said kind things about her. Someone read a poem she had loved. I stood by the grave and felt nothing. Not sadness, not peace, just emptiness. I went home to a house that was suddenly too quiet. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we had shared thousands of meals. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. I had never noticed how loud it was. I sat there for a long time, listening to the clock, wondering when the silence had started. I realized it hadn't started that day. It had started years ago, maybe decades. I just hadn't been paying attention. In the weeks after Margaret died, I started going through her things. I found boxes in the closet I had never opened, old letters, journals, photographs. I sat on the bed and read her journals. Pages and pages of her thoughts, her feelings, her fears. She wrote about feeling invisible. She wrote about wanting to be seen. She wrote about waiting for me to ask how she was, really ask, and being disappointed when I didn't. She wrote about loving me. She wrote about feeling alone anyway. I sat there and read her words, and I understood for the first time what I had done. I had been in the room with her for 52 years, but I hadn't been with her, not in the way she needed. I thought presence meant proximity. It doesn't. Presence means attention. It means curiosity. It means asking questions and caring about the answers. I stopped asking questions a long time ago. I assumed I already knew everything about her. I was wrong. I found a list she had written near the end. Things she wanted to do, places she wanted to visit, conversations she wanted to have. Most of the items were unchecked. At the bottom she had written, "Tell Richard how I really feel." She never did. Or maybe she tried, and I wasn't listening. I will never know. I am 86 years old. I live alone in the house we shared. I wake up in the same bed. I drink my coffee at the same table. But everything is different. I talk to Margaret sometimes, not out loud, just in my head. I tell her the things I should have said. I ask the questions I should have asked. It's too late. I know that. But I do it anyway. I don't tell this story because I want pity. I don't tell it because I want forgiveness. I tell it because I spent 52 years married to a woman I loved, and I let her feel alone. I let routine replace attention. I let comfort replace care. And by the time I realized what I had lost, she was already gone. People talk about marriages that fail. They talk about divorce and arguments and betrayal. But there's another kind of loss, the quiet kind, the kind where nothing dramatic happens, where two people stay together but stop reaching for each other. That's what happened to us, and I didn't see it until it was too late. If you're listening to this, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not wise. I'm just old. But I know what it feels like to sit in an empty house and realize you had everything and didn't see it. I know what it feels like to read your wife's journal and discover she was lonely for years. I know what it feels like to wish you had asked one more question, had one more conversation, paid one more moment of real attention. There's a photograph on my nightstand, Margaret and me, on our wedding day, both of us young, both of us smiling. I look at it every night before I go to sleep. I try to remember the man I was that day, the man who wanted to hear her laugh again. I don't know when he disappeared. I don't know when I stopped being that man. I just know that I did. And she noticed, and I didn't. She stayed with me anyway. She stayed for 52 years. But she shouldn't have had to feel alone while she did. Thank you for listening to an old man talk about what he missed. I hope you see what I didn't see.